Your emotions will always speak. The question is whether you let them inform your choices or control them. Emotional resolve isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about transforming raw emotion into clarity and discipline and right action. I'm Justin Gates, and I'm joined today, as always, by my faithful companion, Michael Perry, and you're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast, Embracing the Shadow Through Self-Mastery. Here we explore emotional healing, shadow work, self-mastery, and spiritual growth without shortcuts or dogma. And Michael, we do this through grounded conversations on trauma, ego, discipline, spirituality, and integration, just to name a few things. We're here to help you understand why healing feels difficult sometimes and how real change happens. And today, Michael, we'll be exploring emotional resolve and how to transform feeling into clarity, discipline, and right action. How do you feel about that? Put that in your
I think it's perfect. For anyone who watched our last episode, this is very much like a part 2 to that.
It is.
We originally were talking about how emotions hijack us and how triggers are when they impact our minds. This is how you take those emotions that come up, that chaos inside, and how you learn to utilize it to actually be beneficial to your life.
Exactly. It's kind of it's an unofficial part 2, but it does flow right into it nicely. And before we get rolling too much with this, I want to talk about the context of the word right action as we're using it today. Just so there's no confusion, Michael. This right action does not mean perfect action. In fact, nothing we do and say right means perfect anything. But it also doesn't mean action that reflects any kind of dogma or any one morality over the other. I want to just set that straight right now. Right action here is that response that aligns with our character and it aligns with the clarity that we find and consequence, even when emotion is present. So think of it like it's action chosen after emotion has been acknowledged, as we talked about in the last show, but not while it's in control of us or just the situation is just out of hand, right? Sometimes right action is speaking more clearly or more impeccably. Sometimes it's waiting and pausing. Sometimes it's setting a boundary in the moment. Sometimes it's stepping away, right? Sometimes it's literally doing nothing at all and just kind of standing there going, okay, right? So that's what right action is in the context we're using today. I don't want you to think that we're sitting on some kind of moral high ground, a moral high horse, or we're trying to feed you some dogma, because we're not.
Yeah. Crap, how many times is the right action being just picking the lesser of two evils, right?
Sometimes.
I mean, I tell you what, that's one of those things that I think is one of the hardest for people is they're presented a situation that's a lose-lose situation and having to make that right decision on which one is going to have the least negative impact on themselves and those around them.
Right. At the end of the day, right action here in this context means responding instead of reacting. That's really what we're talking about today. That's right action. So most of us were never really taught what to do with our emotions. We've talked about that many times, and it's true, right? We were either likely taught to label it as good or bad, or hide it or fear it, right? Suppress it. For those who grew up in households where you were taught that being strong, be strong, Michael. Be strong means shutting the feelings down sometimes. Others were taught that being authentic means expressing everything without restraint. But both of these approaches fail in that long run, doesn't it? And neither one leads to self-mastery at all.
Yeah, a lot of these different situations, they become patterns and schemas in which we use to operate in the world and how to get our needs met and how to get things done. And often without evaluation, they run our lives.
They do.
But we're able to start to learn how to master these emotions, to process them in a way that we can learn from them and utilize them, we can gain so much power in our lives.
That's true. That is true. So in this episode, we're going to talk about emotional resolve. And that means not denying, no emotional denial, but also not completely indulging everything they give us too. But we're really going to focus on the discipline of feeling fully without being ruled by impulse. Emotions are not the problem. For most of us, the problem is the lack of training or the lack of practice, right? On how to hold them, how to integrate them, how to have relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
what
that's one of the
happens
most
is,
important parts of self-mastery, right?
right?
Self-mastery is the acceptance of all of you, all the parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to utilize the strengths that are inherent to each part.
Yeah. Yes. Because when they're unpracticed, when this is untrained, these emotions, they either explode outward or they collapse inward, and neither is good for us. There's an axiom I want you guys to put in the back of your mind today as we go through this episode. And that axiom of light is one who walks the path of light does so with acceptance and contentment, free of conflict. Now, of course, Michael, this doesn't mean that we will never have conflict. We'll never fight with ourselves or anyone else, right?
You know,
This does not mean being passive. This does not mean being passive aggressive. This does not mean just willy nilly, no boundaries, none of this stuff. What this axiom is telling us for this episode today is that walking this path of mastery, of self mastery, requires acceptance without allowing that inner turmoil, that inner conflict, to learn how to move away from that. It's still going to happen. It still always will happen to all of us, but learning to move away from that as often as we can, because people like to wage war on themselves. And they usually attack their heart, their emotional life, their emotional self. And when we can learn to stop fighting what we feel, we gain clarity, we gain focus, we gain presence, we gain a way forward. Mostly we regain choice.
I think that's a really powerful way to look at it, because it's like you have the two sides of the spectrum. And for one side, it's not causing damage to those you love and that are around you. But on the other, the power you gain in being able to choose how you can respond, to choose how you're going to react to something, is so powerful, because there's so many who they have those moments where a choice needs to be made and they freeze up, they run away, they lock up, whatever it is that's going on. And that high insight later of, I wish I would have done this. When you learn to work with these parts, when you learn to do this kind of work, you learn that in that moment, even if you feel that fear, you have the courage to step forward anyway.
You do, and you find yourself not being able to be manipulated as easily. You don't abandon yourself or your cause or your character or your integrity. It makes it easier to stand on business when you can have emotional resolve in your life. What is emotional resolve? If we had to define it for somebody, what would you say emotional resolve is?
Emotional resolve is being able to experience emotions, to interpret emotions, and to be able to be cognizant in what we do with those emotions. So if I'm feeling anger right now, it does not mean that I'm letting that anger override me and lash out at someone, or to go in throwing fists. It
Right,
allows me to feel that emotion of anger and be like, hey, there's a boundary being violated right now.
right,
And being able to state, stop what you're doing, you're crossing a line here.
right.
Or feeling
Yeah,
fear and feeling that need to run, and it's being able to catch yourself in that emotion and being like, hey, I'm not in danger right now. I see what's overwhelming about this, but I'm not going to let this feeling overwhelm me.
right. Emotions are part of being a human being. If you're listening to this or watching this on Spotify or on YouTube and you're not a human, then this does not apply to you. But if you are a human, emotions are a part of our way of life, our life, right?
Yeah.
So to deny that is to deny reality. That's just a fact. But this is where things start to get muddy and foggy for us, right? Because when people hear the word acceptance, they often just means just turning over to, right? Not surrendering in the way that we talk about surrender often on this show, where we say we have to kind of give it to God or give it to the universe or give it over away from us because we may not know the right way forward. Here we're talking about just giving away control to our emotional state, right? So when we hear the word acceptance, sometimes we like to think that's what we mean, as if accepting an emotion means letting it take over or justify our behavior, something you said yesterday or in our last show when we were talking about anger, right? We use it to justify the things we do and say, or to even dictate our decisions. That assumption keeps people stuck between these two extremes, either suppressing all the feelings, all the emotions, pushing them down, or just being completely reactive to everything all the time. The emotional resolve lives in between these two extremes. And funny enough, right in the middle, right? Where there's balance, where there's harmony. It is the capacity to feel deeply down to your roots without being ruled by circumstances or people or your feelings.
Exactly.
It is the difference between experiencing anger and becoming anger. Emotional resolve helps us separate the identity with the feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think of this quote I heard a while back, and it's like, you're allowed to feel anger, but what you do with that anger is your responsibility. And it is very much taking ownership of our emotions instead of letting our emotions take ownership of us.
And here's a another important distinction here. Emotional resolve is the pathway to self-mastery here because you're not controlling through force, right? You're not forcing anything to happen here. You're controlling your trajectory through relationship with. But most of us weren't taught this distinction, or even it doesn't occur to us because we don't see enough example of it, right? So, because like I said, we're either taught, literally taught, or kind of just taught by watching other people as we're growing. That either it's A, push it down, or B, let it spill out everywhere. So,
Yep.
I like to think of emotional resolve as being presence, which is where our power is, right? Paired with discipline. And it's feeling paired with foresight and sensitivity with restraint. And this is why we call it a process of alchemy, right?
Yeah. Well, again, it's like all these parts of us have innate powers to them. There
Mm-hmm.
is something superhuman about all these emotions. Empathy, sadness, all these things. Sadness tells you how deeply you can love. Anger
Yeah.
tells you where you need to stand your ground. Fear tells you where there may be threat.
Right. Right.
But discernment is what you need for all of these.
Yes. And as we talked about in the last show, discernment only comes after what? We acknowledge our feelings and we
Yeah.
let ourselves start to settle. We got to use our body for that one. We got to let ourselves settle here first in the body. Then we can do these things we're talking about. So I guess I should preface something else here too. We have moved on to the part where we're talking about what we do post regulating, right? This is where this stuff happens. And some of it will happen, again, even a little bit of regulation, as we talked about in the last show. As we start to regulate, even a little by little, this is where this stuff starts to come in too. So, because we have to start taking back control when these things happen, right? So, how often have you heard the saying, trust your gut, trust your feelings, right?
There's a
All
couple tangents there, but yeah.
all of my Star Wars fans out there, I'm thinking of this exact scene that you're thinking of too. When you hear that, trust your feelings, right?
You
This phrase, although it does have its merits and it is true contextually, right? If it's not the right setting or context, it can be misunderstood. Because really, trusting your feelings does not mean handing over authority to your decisions and your actions and your words and your thoughts, right?
Well, that's really the big part of all of this, right? Even in healing, it's about learning to take the emotions out of the driver's seat and put them in the passenger seat. They're allowed to help you find your way. Just don't let them take the steering wheel. You got to be able to consult your mind when you're doing this stuff.
Yes. Trust your feelings, but also consult your mind when you can, right? Because emotions they function as signals, as messengers. We say it a lot. They alert us to misalignment or danger or desire or attachment or whatever. Fill in the blanks, right? There's many things we could put in there. But a signal, Michael, is not a command.
And I think that's where a lot of people get it mixed up, right? They see it as instructions instead of information.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Because our feelings inform us of something. They do not instruct us. And emotional resolve here begins the moment we understand this distinction. This is where we start this work and this practice. So we have to understand that when raw instinct operates without reflection, and not just instinct, but when our nervous system just reacts, when we react, and we don't give ourselves time or the opportunity to start to reflect as we come back down, as we start to regulate that stuff, right? As we start to open up and find clarity, we will just shoot off at the mouth. We'll do hasty things. You said earlier, punch a guy in the face or whatever.
Yep.
Things that regret always follows. When intellect operates without feeling, though, we are what? You said it, yes. You said it in the last show. We disconnect. We become cold. We become detached or overly rational, which can also, the extremes are not good either way. We want to try to be in the middle here. And things suffer, right?
Well, I think one of the big issues is people start to confuse insecurity for intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And often when that happens, it's a hijacking. Insecurity yells in your face. It is there telling you, run, do something about this. Intuition, it's that quiet voice saying it's going to be okay, or you should really reevaluate this.
Yeah. Now, as we move on, I'm gonna issue an open challenge. But I will preface that with saying that I do see it getting better, kind of in the landscape of these communities where spirituality, psycho-spiritual, psychology, all these places. There is this, and I'm issuing an open challenge that one of the most ingrained habits people carry around are that emotions equal some sort of moral judgment. This is the myth of good and bad emotions. And most of us are taught probably early on, right, to divide these, put them in different boxes, different categories of what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, what's healthy and unhealthy, what's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
But all this framing does is create confusion and more inner conflict before any kind of real insight or understanding can take place. Certainly no reflection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at just society's stigmas. Like, men weren't allowed to feel emotions until recently. And even then, what emotion is now accepted in men? Sadness. You think anger is a very widely accepted emotion for men? Like,
only when it works out for others. That's the only time they think it's right.
Yep. And don't get me wrong, there are men who use anger in horrific ways. We are not justifying that.
No, we're not. Well, I'm not justifying the labeling of or the indulgence of one over the other either.
Yeah.
At all, period. Right?
Well said. Well said.
Listen, as we start to coalesce with self-mastery, as we move along this path, more and more, we start to learn that there are no divisions in this way. We are one being, right? And this is why we always approach things this way. And again, this is about that open challenge. No emotion is inherently good or bad. No emotion is some sort of moral failure. They are responses, period. Do we do good things with them? Do we do bad things with them? Of course. But that's what we're doing with them, not because, you know what I'm saying? Not because of them. Because these things arise in response to even a perception or a memory or a belief or a circumstance. The emotion is not really the issue, Michael. The relationship that we have with the emotion or the lack of relationship we have with our emotions is the problem.
Well, again, it's like we talked about in the last episode, how emotions, when we're triggered, we emotionally regress to a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
Often when we're feeling anger, we are feeling anger from something years in the past and not actually what's going on. You know, someone accidentally steps on your foot and it takes you back to when you were 5 and you slammed your foot into a door and had to go to the hospital. Now you're pissed off and yelling at someone because they accidentally did something. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
always a map that tells
Yeah.
you where this emotion stems from. And it's 9 out of 10, if not more, not from that moment.
Yeah. It's me that I usually yell at when I pinch my finger or something. Or I bang my head or on a cabinet or something. I get really mad at myself. I don't blame anybody else, man, but I am mad. And, I can't beat myself up. So that cabinet's coming off the wall if I'm not careful. And I gotta, count to 10 or whatever. I do. All you hear is smother. And then sometimes I'll even talk crap to the cabinet, like, how dare
Freaking
you?
cabinet.
How dare you disrespect me blatantly in my own house, you bastard?
I hate how easy that was to envision.
It's because it's true, right? I mean, it's anybody who's ever been around me when that's happened. And, and I know I've said this in earlier shows and I kind of make it a joke out of it, but, something will grab my shorts, man, and it just stresses me out a little bit, so I'm still working on this stuff. I'm like, what do you, like I take it, like we read, well, I don't know if Michael does, but I read a lot of the comments and they're about 50-50, many of them are supportive, but some of them are kind of mean. And I can see those and I just laugh at you. I just want you guys to know that when you put these mean comments in here, it gives me a good chuckle, right? Because I absolutely do not care at all about your negative words for me or for Michael or for the show. Thanks for tuning in, though. Appreciate it, right? But
Yeah.
But if something inanimate grabs my shirt or pulls my shorts, and a few times it's like rip the pockets off my shorts, man, that's it. That is it. I'm going full Thanos, dude. I'm going to just snap away half the cabinets in the universe or something. But
That's
anyway,
what happened to my cabinets.
that's what happened. Yeah, you came home and half your cabinets were gone. It's like, now you know. You're welcome. That
Justin
cabinet
just
was out
lost
to
a
get
pair
you.
of shorts.
So, no emotion is inherently good or bad. That's it. And end of story, right?
Yep.
And we can talk about that real quick because this becomes clear to me when I pick on the good emotions, the so-called positive emotions, right? What happens to love when it's unexamined?
It becomes attachment, infatuation, obsession.
Control, right?
Yeah.
What happens to confidence when it's unchecked?
Becomes arrogance.
Super bad. Super bad.
Tyranny.
Right? What happens when we don't manage our passion?
That goes back to obsession as well. Yeah.
Back to obsession, right? Even joy, as you've and I talked about throughout other episodes, even joy can be used as a form of avoidance when we use it to bypass this kind of discomfort and grief. So no emotion is immune from imbalance. At the same time, we were talking about this before the show. These emotions that we label as negative or bad or immoral or evil or whatever, right, often carry some of the most valuable information that we have access to. Anger can reveal violated boundaries, as you said. Fear can point to uncertainty or unresolved risk that we haven't faced, right? Sadness can signal something that we lost that needs to be honored. Sadness can be. It's not always. Don't take this as an absolute, but sadness can signal that we have some grieving to do, right? My point is, these are not our enemies. They are a part of us. If we use them as messengers, we'll be a lot better off. But the way I see it, when we start labeling these things, that's where the real harm starts, is because we will try to moralize our inner life. When we decide that certain emotions mean we are failing or weak or unspiritual, that judgment creates a lot of inner conflict. And inner conflict fragments us in so many bad ways.
The body knows. The impacts to health, to self-esteem, to self-trust, it's all too real.
Now, I will say, However, I'm always doing this on you, Mike. I'm always flipping you around here, right?
Yep.
However, when we label emotions in a way that names them to helps them bring them into our awareness so we can meet them, so we can integrate them, so we can talk to them, so we could whatever, right? That gives, when we do that, it gives us a language to experience them and allows reflection to begin. So, right, some labeling is good. Some labeling is helpful, I should say. I should stop saying good and bad. Some labeling is helpful. So, because this is how we start to build awareness around this.
Well, and it's like, I mean, they call it an emotional compass for a reason. If you don't have south working on your compass, you might end up wandering a direction. You have no idea where you're going.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. But again, just kind of the bottom line here is when we meet our emotions with honest awareness, without judgment, without urgency, that kind of shadow part of it loses its grip over us, and it allows us to control what we do, what we say, right? And it doesn't have to beat on us or shout in our ears to be heard. And it gives us something to work with. That's the most important thing. But emotional resolve does not come from the decision between which emotions are allowed, which emotions are good, which emotions are bad or moral or whatever, right? At the end of the day. So let's talk about matters of the heart when we're dealing with emotional resolve. Because we are of two parts here when we're talking about emotional resolve, right? And the first one is matters of the heart. That could also mean our nervous system, our body, these things that trigger us. And I know we talked about triggers in the last show. We won't really beat that topic to death anymore, probably until later on a different show, because it's always good to come back to good things. But passion. Let's start off by talking about passion. Passion is one of the most powerful forces a person can carry, right?
It's one of those, and it's not as common as we would like it to be, but passion has the ability to conquer mountains, has the ability to create worlds. But passion also has the power to destroy.
Mm-hmm.
It has the power to completely lose touch with peace.
Yeah. It fuels our commitment, right? Our conviction. It helps us stand up for what matters to us. It helps us to create, as you said, the things that matter to us. It gives energy to the things that we serve, like justice and protection and purpose, right? But it's one of the easiest places for emotional resolve to break down when it goes unchecked. In one of the lines of our code is what? Passion, yet serenity. Because passion also can feel very, very righteous, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the issue, I mean, you look at matters of the heart. I know we're diving into passion right now, but this is how we have, in my opinion, we look at this as how we've learned to cope with our emotions. This is the way it gets channeled, the way it gets, how we've learned to manage our emotions in a way that allows us to either avoid or not have to deal with them. And so when it comes to passion, if we're passionate about something, we're constantly trying to prove ourselves. We're constantly trying to reach these goals or obtain these things. And it's like, I've been guilty of this. I know I was someone who was always, as soon as I would want something and I would go for it. Once I got it, though, it would almost lose all meaning. It would be on to the next thing.
Right.
It'd be this endless pursuit.
Yeah. Passion feels righteous if it's left unchecked. But righteous is good, Justin. Righteousness, Michael, is a good thing, right? Isn't that what is taught and said? Righteousness is good until it starts to become unquestionable.
Yeah. Look at the Holy Crusades, right?
We could name 10,000 things, right? And we could pick on every part of the world through all out of human history where righteousness becomes unquestionable and then turns into what? Self-righteousness. And self-righteousness is a cancer to true virtue, period. Never engage in anything that exceeds your strength and ability. The temptation to rely on false greatness is a path to darkness. axiom of light. And the problem with this is that it's not always something that's easy to see as you go deeper and deeper into this unquestionable righteousness. It's not dramatic usually. It doesn't even appear reckless to you. It looks like riding, if you ride this wave of passion and you just ride it through everything you're doing and you don't put parameters around it, you don't kind of keep it on a leash, as it were, that passion will carry you right past wisdom.
Yep. Well, it's like the way I look at it is when we're passionate about something, especially if it's a goal that keeps moving and it's not necessarily the hop around, our vision slowly narrows. And as it becomes an obsession, we end up losing sight of anything else, nor, like you said, any wisdom we could gain to give us a greater perspective. When we become so fixated on something we're passionate about, we end up losing all moral reasoning. We lose all ground of what even originally drew us to this thing, because it is an obsession at this point. It's no longer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's obsession walking around as virtue. It's masquerading as. Especially when we get messed with, especially when someone wrongs us or we feel like they've wronged us, or if we feel misunderstood or threatened, we are quick to burn. Quick to burn. Not the nice little warm campfire we talked about a few shows back, but that raging wildfire that just burns indiscriminately and just takes out everything. And you do that long enough, the body now learns what? That this kind of thing is now permission for it to do it all the time.
That's a sad truth. I mean, I heard Jordan Peterson say this once. One of the biggest issues is you're someone who becomes a liar. So if you become a liar, you no longer can even tell who a liar is because it's so natural to you. It becomes so embodied. And that's when it comes to not just emotions, but habits. We have to be mindful what we do with our time, energy, and lives, because as soon as we start pursuing something, anything in life, the walls for resisting it become lighter and lighter.
Yeah. I'll share an example that is true to real life. And it's something we see a lot in human behavior and in society just as a whole. There is a fine line and this ever-present intertension between justice and vengeance, right? Justice seeks restoration, balance, right order. Vengeance does not care about any of that, and it just wants emotional release.
Man, do people mix that one up.
We do. All of us. All of us do it. I do it too. And I don't always quite catch it fast enough. Right? If I perceive that somebody wronged Heather, and it can be the dumbest, tiniest little thing, Michael, like a wildfire.
0 to 60.
Yeah. I could go like a wildfire. Because of good emotions, my love, my devotion, my blah, 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 blah. Those things are fuel for fire if I let them be. And not a campfire, a wildfire. So, and yes, we all kind of struggle with that one. We do. This is where awareness starts to help us, though. Without awareness, passion will always choose what? The fastest, most expedient thing, despite whatever consequences, if we let it progress into obsession. Another place this could show up, just another example, is in how we respond to being misread or misunderstood emotionally, right? Passionate people are often labeled pretty horribly, right? People who are super passionate about something. They're labeled as intense or angry or volatile sometimes. Even when their intent is to seek clarity or just simply to protect the people they love or themselves. And that kind of thing can be a trigger of its own. But again, if we let it, that reaction isn't just about the misread or the slight or the crap talking, right? It's about being seen accurately, and how dare you not see me for who I am. So again, passion can be good. Passion is good for lots of things. But if we contain it, if we use the fire of passion in a way that helps us and we don't let it burn out of control, because reactions are fast, right? They're emotionally charged with good emotions and bad emotions, those quote unquote good and bad, but they're very short sighted. In contrast to that, if we learn to respond, a response still honors that feeling, but it is shaped by insight and foresight and wisdom.
Yeah.
So a response will consider consequence. What ripples am I going to send out? And how far out can I see that this is going to affect other people, many of which who probably aren't even involved?
When we have a response like this, I mean, almost every time the response will not only be better, but it will garner better results. It'll
Yes.
lead to better or more desirable outcomes, and the chance of not burning bridges.
Right. Yeah. And again, I know I've said this a lot this episode, but I'm going to keep saying this because this is a sticking point for a lot of places and a lot of circles and a lot of communities that I see this work being done. If something is consistently provoking a strong emotional response, it is pointing towards unfinished work, not moral weakness, right? Awareness of that trigger is the doorway back to finding our agency, to finding our sovereignty, our self-mastery. So, and this is the heart really of emotional resolve. Control is not domination, it is foresight. We're not trying to force or dominate ourselves or others. So it is allowing us to have that ability to see a reaction or have the response long before we give it. And I say long before, that could be a few seconds, but that's still a lot of time when you're paused, right? When you are sitting in that space of no time. So now let's talk about emotional resolve in your favorite part, the mind. Let's talk about emotional resolve as it concerns instinct and intellect and how these things work in harmony together.
So, as we talked about in the last episode, when emotions take hold, they like to color the impressions of our mind, to give us stories and narratives that control us. But when we can separate emotions from that narrative and see things for what they are, I mean, the best way to look at this is stepping out of yourself and seeing things objectively instead of subjectively. You know, it's like one of my favorite examples is traffic. You know, you deal with someone with road rage, honking behind you, trying to get around you, and instantly you're like, screw you, I did nothing wrong. I'm going the speed limit. But if you step out of yourself, all of a sudden it's like,
man.
Yeah, right? It's like, but you step out of yourself, you take a minute, you take that pause, and you get into your analytical mind, and it's like, I bet this person is either A, having a really crappy day, or they're perpetually in a hurry state, which I have been that person. Maybe not honking and getting all road ragey, but I've been that person who is like rushing from point to point because everything feels immediate. Like that person is having 10 times worse of a day than I am right now. But it's being able to look at things from a place that is not energetically charged. And sadly, more often than not, this is more than just, I'm going to step out of myself. It's regulating yourself. It's calming your nervous system, bringing your frontal cortex back online. And then you can evaluate these emotions and actually do something productive with them.
Yeah. Instinct and intellect are not enemies. They are partners. One of my oldest friends, Charles McBride, he said to me once, instinct provides direction, the mind provides methods, right? And that's very true. Because instincts are a necessary part of us. You could no more shoo away your instincts as you could your ego, and nor should you try, because you're just going to keep finding more suffering. They register the shifts in our environments. Think of them not so much as messengers, but as sensors, right? They help us see and feel the shifts in our environments, changes in our relationships. These little tiny subtle cues that logic may miss and usually does. Instinct and intuition are almost one and the same sometimes, right? But instinct is often the first part of you to notice misalignment or a risk in your life or opportunity or even opportunity. But instinct is not designed to decide the outcomes. That's where our intellect steps in, right?
Just because you're thinking does not mean your intellect is engaged.
Right. Yeah. When we leave instinct to its own devices, it becomes reaction. And we've already determined, Michael, that reaction is not the best way forward, because it just wants to get through it as fast as possible with a sense of urgency, and it wants to be done with that thing that's annoying it or irritating it. And it will fall back to what's familiar. And what's familiar to you might be 10 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
certainly not in the present where your power is.
Well, and even your reaction is going to be what is familiar, because even if it's not the best approach, it is what has kept you safe in the past. And the body only knows what is in the past.
Right. Yes. Now, the mind exists in this dynamic to slow the moment down, just like I said a minute ago, that kind of timeless spot. So we can evaluate our options, right? So we can consider the consequences, so we can choose response that align with our character and what our actual intentions are, right? Intellect gives shape to that raw information. So when intellect is absent, instinct becomes impulsive. When instinct is ignored, intellect becomes disconnection. What's your point, Justin? She just said, what's your point? Did you hear that? You guys hear that? She said, what's your point? My point is emotional resolve requires both of these in tandem, homies helping you through it. So that's my point. And this might be where some people mistake or assume that emotional intelligence is innate. They'll see others who remain calm under pressure all the time, who always seem to respond thoughtfully in those really difficult, crazy moments, and assume that those people were simply born that way. Not saying it's not true, Michael, but I'm pretty sure that would be a rare thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Pretty rare. So what?
You know, it is crazy how sometimes things happen. It is rare, but yeah.
People look at me and they will say, my God, that guy holds it together. Everything around him is burning. You know that meme where the guy's like, this is fine, and the fires are coming around him and stuff? Yeah. You know, I always look like I'm cool under pressure, but I was not born that way. That took a lot of practice. A lot of practice. So what looks like this natural superpower of composure is usually the result of practice, right? Where the person learns to notice their instinct, to follow the cues of their intuition, not obey them, but to see where those things are pointing to. And in this case, where the emotion was felt, notice I didn't say what the emotion felt. I said where. Where is it felt? Right? Wherever. Allowing the person to feel it to get a better idea of what is going on. So my point is emotional mastery, this emotional resolve is completely trainable. You can do it. You can do it. So let me tell you how this harmony between the two is built, just kind of real quick. Instinct speaks, the mind listens, and then what? Choice follows that. I know it sounds really easy. Just takes a lot of
And
practice.
yet it's one of the hardest things you will ever learn to master.
It is, I know. But that's kind of the progression of how we listen to ourselves. We decide, we choose, respond, not react. So the way I teach emotional resolve is both kind of heart, body, right, mind, but then I also split it up into two other things. And the first one of those things, Michael, is self-awareness. This is before discipline. This is before restraint. This is before your woo-woo wise action. There must be self-awareness, right?
It's the power of that pause, right?
Yes.
And let me tell you, just learning to do that pause when you get activated is difficult. All right, we're talking about jumping on a roller coaster going full speed, and you're learning to hit the pause button instead of having a joyful time, right?
Yeah. You know, the pause is like a cheat code, man, in the game of life, dude. It really is. But without awareness, effort turns into just blunt force. You're just pushing and forcing. And tension can turn into frustration. And we'll often try to change our behaviors without understanding what is actually pushing us without us knowing it. And when that fails, we just what? You know what? There must be something wrong with me. Is there something wrong with me, Michael?
No,
No.
no. But we'll convince ourselves of it. I mean, how often do you have one of these moments where after it occurs, after you get triggered, you have your activation, you do whatever it is, whether that's to run or fight or whatever, and then you think afterwards, it's like, God, why am I so like?
We've had conversations like this for a couple of years. And mostly early on as we started to build, right, upon our work and our healings and our shadow work and stuff. And I would give you an axiom of light like this. If you have been sincere in your efforts when progress eludes you, do not force action. Simply accept that all that you have done, all that you can do. This axiom is kind of calling us out, and it's saying how harsh we become against ourselves when growth feels slow or when things don't feel like they're working, when our reactions keep repeating and repeating and repeating, when we can't I command you to stop that pattern when they don't stop on command. Now, the instinct would be to push harder, demand more discipline, command and demand more discipline. Just be more disciplined. Just believe harder, Michael. Right? Or we just judge the crap out of ourselves for not improving fast enough. Just before the court of judgment inside of our heads, inside of our hearts. And but emotional resolve does not begin with force, does it?
No. It does, like you said, it begins with awareness. And it's understanding yourself, I think, is such a big part of this. So often it's like we refuse to be honest with the part we play in our own suffering. We refuse to not look in the mirror and understand how our personality is, what motivates us,
Right.
what our passions are, or what our triggers are. It's a spy. It is something that will have a hold of us. These are all aspects of the shadow that will always have first say.
Here's what self-awareness is not. And you can add to or correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. Self-awareness is not that constant self-deprecating analysis or self-criticism. What else is self-awareness not?
Self-awareness isn't trying to point out all our flaws and judge ourselves for it. I know for me, it was always that. It was always, why do I have to be like this? Why am I so broken? This is who I am. Let me tell you, that was probably one of my greatest weaknesses and self-awareness is, this is just how I am. I'm always going to be like this. I've always been like this.
You're in good company because lots of us are like that or were like that at some point or the other. Self-awareness is taking an honest look, a non-judgmental look of what our inner landscape looks like, what it's doing. It's understanding our temperament, our sensitivities, our motivations, our passions, and the things that drive us crazy, the things that annoy us, the good and bad, the right and wrong, all these things. No morality involved. These things are as they are. They are what they are, right? But they are part of us. It's recognizing how we tend to respond when we feel threatened or when we get pissed off or we feel unseen or even excited or disappointed or overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
The key here is once you see the patterns clearly, you stop being surprised by them over time. You're like, somebody cuts you off in traffic. When they do that to me now, I do kind of glare at them a little bit, but that's as far as it goes, right? Before I would be like, banging on my steering wheel, punching the horn. I guess trying to get my airbag to punch me in the face because I hit it hard, you know.
Yeah, right.
But now when it happens, I know that that's going to piss me off. I know it is. So instead of letting it piss me off, I go, oh, I'm going to get pissed off. And then I don't, right? Because I know it's coming. I call it out and it's done. And it just doesn't happen most of the time. So this ownership, this self-awareness, this accountability to ourselves, really, it's not about denying the things that other people do to us that will affect us. It's about recognizing where the responsibility for our reaction and choosing response ultimately lives. And it really, we own it, right? It's on us. So your emotions belong to you, man. I don't claim them. They're not mine. And even if I trigger you and influence your emotions, guess who they still live with? Guess who they still belong to?
They're still my responsibility, right? Like, I tell you what, I think that's one of the places people get so confused. You know, we talk about often it's not about blame. And I think that is one thing people in the healing scene struggle so much with. Because, yeah, you could totally come at me. You could say all the hateful things you want and piss me the hell off. But what I do with my anger is still my responsibility. It is not your fault. It is your fault I have anger.
Right.
But it is not if I lash back, if I come at you, if I try to beat you up or something like that, that's on me. That is my response to my emotion.
I may have caused it, but it's not my problem. That's your problem, dude.
Yeah.
Right? So if self-awareness is the first half of emotional resolve, then what is the second? Let's see if you can remember. What is the second half of emotional resolve as I teach it?
Being able to come to the present?
Mindfulness, yes.
Yeah.
That's close enough. That's pretty much, right? Mindfulness. So if self-awareness is the first half of this emotional resolve, then mindfulness is the second. Because the awareness allows you to recognize what is happening inside you, around you, whatever. Mindfulness determines what? What you do with that awareness in real time, in the present, how you respond.
Well, it pulls you out of, like, again, the body lives in the past, so it pulls you into the moment where you can be who you are now. You know, again, we go to these moments we were helpless as children. We are grown-ass adults now. Mm-hmm. We have so much power than we ever did when we had these helpless emotions.
Right.
But that also means that we can do a lot more damage.
Yeah. We can throw hands or decide not to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, to avoid any confusion, mindfulness in this context is not necessarily a meditative thing, right? It's really not about emptying our mind, escaping life, or becoming detached from what's happening. Because it'll still be there waiting for you when you come back. So there's no point in even doing that. It's about selective attention. This is what mindfulness is here. Selective attention. And what is selective attention? It's that ability to choose what you are giving your awareness to.
And being conscious of how you're going to impact the world around you.
Yes. And how much energy you're going to devote to it and for how long. This matters because perspective shapes our emotional response. And if we can tune our perspective into a more mindful one, that changes our response, right? Changes how we react. I'll give you an example. Two different people can witness the same exact event, frame for frame, right? But also experience it entirely different emotionally. They can have totally different emotional reactions to it. The event itself obviously is exactly the same. That part doesn't change. What changes, though, is that frame of reference through the way they perceive it. I'll give you two people here. One's a comedian and one's a politician. They can describe the same situation, tell the story about it, but evoke a completely different emotional state. One will invite reflection or levity. The other may provoke urgency or fear or outrage, right? The content, again, is absolutely similar, but the framing is not, the perspective is not. One finds a way to to tell the story in a way that lightens our hearts, maybe, depending on the event, of course. But a comedian and a politician are going to talk about these things in two completely different ways. They're going to describe it to you. It's almost going to sound like you're listening to two different things that happen.
Yeah.
And what this kind of describes is why our perspective is important here. When you place your awareness exclusively on things that are like a threat or injustice or loss, we train our bodies for that. We train our bodies to look for it, to always see it, to always react to it. Right? When that perspective, and we allow mindfulness and awareness to enter, we broaden ourselves. We open up to also include context and knowledge and resource and things that are happening in the present moment. One of these things will trigger that response, that negative response that we don't like. One will help us stay calm and regulated, right?
Yeah.
So mindfulness restores choice. That's why it's the other important half, because it'll allow you to notice when you're slipping into a narrative that removes that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Through mindfulness, you become, it is what grants you the power of the pause. And the pause can magnify it, allow you to step out of yourself, because in the present, you are not being run by all these past events.
Mindfulness is also a way for us to be able to serve in a greater capacity without burning ourselves out too. Just a little side note there, right? But every time we can be aware and mindful, it is just another act of self-trust, another act of taking ownership and responsibility of ourselves. And really, it just builds upon that freedom and that agency that we have. So think of mindfulness as kind of like the regulating part of this. It helps regulate us. I mean, it allows that emotional resolve to remain available even when the world is crashing down upon us.
Yeah, because realistically, there is no regulation without this mindfulness.
Yeah. Why is that? Why do we need mindfulness for regulation? Just to finish that thought of yours.
Yeah, again, how sort of the mind will go and try to create these narratives. One thing that is consistent about narratives next to logical thinking. Narratives are either running plays from the past or making preparations for the future. Neither of those live in the present. The logical mind will think of actions and the situation as it is in this moment without the baggage from either the future or the past.
So let's share some tools for emotional resolve. I'll let you go first. What's a good thing we can do to start building this in ourselves?
Well, I think one of the most important things we need to do is we got to learn to sit in our feelings. We got to learn to feel our emotions. And we got to learn how to discharge it. I always look at it as we have these different batteries inside of us of different emotions, and they build up this storage capacity, and we got to discharge them. And different ways to do that is physical movement. Somatics. Somatics are amazing. You know, whether that's you screaming into a pillow, shivering convulsively, which sounds crazy, but I promise it's amazing. You know, it's different types of ways to process these emotions, but it's being able to feel them. And the most important part of this, and this is where a lot of people get stuck, not let them take you for a ride, or else they just perpetuate the emotion. Feel it in your body, not in your mind. You can't articulate your way through your emotions.
Yes. And I'll say before I share one that these are not meant to become an outlet for escape. Moderation in all things, even in these exercises and things that are good for us. Another one is through reflection. It's one I like to do. And, we take the journal, for example. It's not about venting endlessly. It's about creating distance between emotion and identity. Writing down what happened, what you felt, how you reacted, how you might respond differently in the future is something we do every day with our journal prompts. Another one could be learning to choose our battles wisely.
Man, that was a lesson I am so glad I learned at a young age. Because it's true, picking our battles is one of the most important things we can do in any relationship or environment we're exposed to constantly. And it doesn't mean cowering away from scenarios where when things are going on that you do not like, but it means to make your voice have its power. It's being able to choose the moments that are impactful, to choose the moments that you are having boundaries being violated.
Right.
To speak up and use them. If everything's a problem, no one's going to listen to you.
So to kind of wrap things up here, and I'll get your closing thoughts here in a second, Michael, I just want to reiterate that emotional resolve is not about eliminating emotion. It's about refining it, meeting it, building relationship with it. Because really, as we talk about a lot for many different things, different parts of ourselves, nothing is gained by trying to remove a fundamental part of being a human being. Emotion will always come up. It will always arise. It's always going to be a part of you. What changes is not whether you feel, but how the feeling is held or met or understood, or how that translates into response versus reaction. Approaching understanding with light does not mean denying darkness. As this axiom of light seems to tell us, right? Approach understanding with light and darkness will never gain purchase. We're not saying approach understanding with light does not mean that darkness does not exist. The shadow is not there. It means meeting ourselves, all the parts of ourselves, with honesty, with patience, with grace, compassion, curiosity instead of judgment.
It's also meeting life with those things.
Exactly. Emotional resolve is the process of alchemy by which raw emotion is transformed. Reaction becomes response. Impulse can become intention. Chaos can become clarity. Nothing is discarded. Everything is refined through alchemy. Anger can become boundary and discernment. We can learn discernment through anger. We can learn how to be more cautious and aware through fear, right? Sadness can become greater depth and compassion. So this is not, and like I always say, this is not a one and done. It's not a one-time achievement. You don't get the little Xbox beep achievement after you unlock it. It is a practice, and you must practice and practice some more. So it's reinforced every time we pause instead of react, every time we choose restraint over release, every time we allow awareness and mindfulness to guide our actions. So that is what emotional resolve is. That's what we've been talking about today. What are your final thoughts, Michael?
You know, I truly feel this is a topic that can truly give you superhuman abilities, razor sharp intuition, the ability to disarm conflict in an instant. But it takes practice. Practice, practice, practice. And it's not something that's going to be mastered within a few sessions. Right. But the more you can align yourself to your compass, the more you're going to be able to walk through life with discernment, with integrity, and with drive. You know, so many of us feel lost in life. But often it's because we're disconnected from our emotions. Our emotions are messengers, our teachers, and can help lead us to our best lives so that we learn to hone in on them. Mm-hmm. So this is a very important episode because this is the path back to yourself.
So and because to your power. The pause, what's that?
And to your power.
And to your power, yes. So because the pause is such a powerful thing we can do, we're going to do an exercise. I'm going to take you through an exercise today, a quick one about the pause. We're going to call it the pause and choose. So step one is to pause the moment you notice some sort of activation, some sort of signal, some sort of nudge, some sort of trigger, right? The first signal is urgency, tightness, whatever sensation you normally feel. Just understand it as that sense that something must be said or done right now, without delay. Something that's pushing us to just immediately react. Do your best not to act just yet. This is where we pause the scene, right? Step two is to breathe at least 3 big, slow breaths. In through the nose. Hold it. Let it out through your mouth. I'm going to do that 3 times, at least 3 times. If you need 20 times, do it, man. But at least 3. Now, this is not meant to calm you down perfectly, like snap, I'm done. Oh, I'm good. That does not exist for most people, at least not for me. but is to start to what, Michael? Signal our nervous system that there is no immediate danger. Because if I have time to breathe big, slow, deep breaths, probably okay, right? Probably going to be fine. Probably not something swinging an axe at my head. Now, the next step is to name the feeling, the emotion, silently to yourself, without judgment. Don't call it names, just call it what it is. Don't call yourself names, just call it what it is. This is anger. This is fear. This is shame, sadness, whatever it may be. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Be curious, not judgmental about it. Naming it creates separation without suppression. I see you, little anger bug over there. I see you. Step 4 is to allow yourself to feel it in the body. Don't feel this. Don't go through the story. Feel it in the body. Notice where that emotion or that feeling lives physically. Could be your chest, your jaw, your stomach. My jaw gets real tight, man. When I go through something, my jaw clenches. It almost feels like I'm going to break all my teeth out, right? Find where it lives. Find where it sits. Stay with it as long as you can. Again, don't try to interpret it. Don't try to hijack it. Don't try to scare it away. Doing this keeps that emotion from taking over your thoughts, hijacking you. Ask one clarifying question, and make sure it's an honest one. I'll give you an example. What response to this emotion, feeling, whatever it is, serves my character? What response serves my character, not just my impulse? Don't rush the answer. Don't force the answer. Just let it come. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to choose. We're going to respond. Choose deliberately. You may want to speak to yourself. You may want to wait or speak to someone else if you're engaged in some kind of conflict. You may want to set a boundary. It may be you don't want to do anything at all, or you don't need to do anything at all. That part doesn't matter. What really matters here is that the action that you take, the response you give, comes after awareness, after mindfulness, not before those things. And the last step here is just to accept the choice. Michael, no second guessing. Knock it off, right?
Yep.
Once you choose, stand on business. Stand by it. Accept whatever consequences, good and bad, come. Because this also helps us fill the jar of marbles. This will build self-trust, right? So over time, more and more, this will do that. So that's our pause and choose exercise for today. And again, this practice is less about being calm. It's more about being conscious and responding and choosing. Because when we pause, we can create some space, right? And we can restore that choice, and we can strengthen the things that matter to us, like our character, for one. So, and the more you do practices like this stuff becomes instinctive, and you won't have to pause as much. So, our affirmations for today. I honor my emotions without allowing them to govern my actions. My feelings inform me, and my wisdom guides me. I respond with clarity even when emotion is strong. I accept every part of my emotional experience and choose right action. I transform emotional energy into discipline, insight, and resolve. And for our journal prompts for today. What emotion has been most present for me lately? And what information is it trying to give me? Where in my life do I react automatically instead of choosing my response? And what would a wiser response look like the next time this situation arises? Good job, Michael. Good job today. It was a good show.
It was a good show.
A great show. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Please, if you have a moment, check out all our socials. I'm not sure where you guys find us at, but you can find us at all the other places too. And we like to do a little bit different each place. You get some goodies at Facebook that you don't get at YouTube, and vice versa, and all this stuff. So make sure you check out all our socials. Check out the greatest website ever created. I mean, ever. Even better than Amazon, except we don't sell stuff there. And we're not delivering anything to your house. I'm sorry. Michael can't handle that workload. So, but yeah. And if the content you enjoyed today, hopefully you enjoyed it. If not, let us know in the comments why not or why. We love interacting with you, except for you knuckleheads that like to talk crap. Let us know what kind of stuff you want us to talk about. If we're not talking about the things that you, or we know you want us to dive deeper into some of these things, send us a message. Just leave a comment. I got a ghost over here telling me what to do.
Just selective.
Story of my life.
Suggestively.
Got to pause. No, just kidding. We love you guys so much and very grateful for your time. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.